have a plate, and there's like little bits of parsley, and you dip in salt water, and there's something called charoset, which is chopped apples with walnuts and honey. That sounds really good, right? There's even some things that are unpleasant to eat, like horseradish. Yes, Skyler, you have to have some. She's balking at this. So anyway, you have all these different elements, but part of the Seder is divided, that whole process is divided, and right about 2/3 of the way through is an actual meal that you have, right? And it's generally made up of things like roasted beef or that kind of thing, and some roasted carrots and that kind of thing. So what we're thinking is we're sort of pondering the process and what that's going to look like for us. We have a couple of options, but here's one we're kicking around. Is that we would, here at the church, we would roast a couple of briskets. We would roast that in-house. And sort of like many of our fellowship things where you guys, like we did for Thanksgiving, you bring the side dishes. But obviously, because this is a Passover meal, we're not looking for everybody to bring, like their green beans with bacon in it and that kind of thing. So they're very specific kind of things. And so the feedback I'm looking for, and I know a lot of folks, if you're working, you're not really probably going to go home, fix something and bring it up here. So that's going to preclude some folks. What we're looking for is some of you guys who either don't work or maybe you do ahead of time and could warm up, some side dishes, and we would provide some recipes if you have other kosher things that go with Passover because you're really interested in this and you want to look it up, we'd be fine with that. But we would provide on our sign up some things where you could say, I will bring this and I'll bring that. Now, if we get everybody going, yep, that sounds like too much work and I don't want to do that part, we got some other workarounds that we could do, but we're trying to get a feel for what you guys, because y'all are normally here on Wednesday nights, y'all would kind of be the core, the people who are probably going to bring stuff. So we want to get a vibe for you guys. What are your thoughts? You don't have to tell me now. You can text me. You can tell Bruce. You can tell Skylar. You can tell, where's Larry? Jerry. Where's Jerry? Right there. He works Jerry's right there. You can talk to any of us and give us some feedback. But we'd love to have your feedback and let us know what your thoughts are. Do you have any questions for me real quick before I turn it back over to Bruce?
Were you going to give them a time idea of how long this was going to take?
Yeah, so we're looking at probably like 6 to 7:30 or 6 to 7:30, so it'd start a little bit earlier. Or it would start like at 6:30 and run a little bit later to 8. So we're talking about an hour and a half. There's also a possibility, Susan had a great idea today earlier. She said, it's possible, what do you think about maybe doing the meal earlier? It's normally sort of in the middle, but you could do the meal earlier. So for people who work or can't get there quite at the right time, they would only be missing the meal and not be missing part of this overall Seder celebration. So that was another great idea she had. But it's probably going to take about an hour and a half to do the whole thing. So that's kind of what we're thinking about. Other quick questions for me? Okay, it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be an amazing opportunity, another opportunity for us to worship and understand the greatness of Jesus. So I'm really excited about it. Bruce, I think I'll turn it back over to you, and I'm going to get back over to the students. We'll see you guys.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Well, we're going to get started here directly. We've got a really good crowd tonight. Obviously, I got a good crowd here tonight because y'all thought that Jerry was try not to look so disappointed. But Jerry will be doing it next week, and we look forward to that. And Jerry is sitting back there. If y'all haven't met Jerry Barker, well, please do that before you get away this evening. Let's see, do we have a song? I think we have a song, right?
Number 15.
Number 15. You folks at home, number 15. Now remember, I told you that we have a two-way deal on the audio, not on the video, so at home we'll be able to hear you singing. So sing pretty.
Never ceasing, all for souls of loudest praise.
very much. Very good. Y'all sounded great. I like that old song. I like those old hymns. We have been, let's see, we have a guest here. Noelia, introduce your sister, all the way from Killeen, Texas.
My sister Lolly, and she's visiting from Killeen.
All the way from Killeen. Even she thought Jerry was going to be. So anyway, we're glad that you're here in particular, all of you. And so we're going to get started. Turn, if you would, to Joshua chapter 3. We made our way through a number of books and got through Exodus and about to get really deep into Joshua. However, we've had the first two chapters of Joshua. Chapters 3 and 4 of Joshua and the events of Exodus 14 and 15 form an inclusio. Y'all probably don't know what an inclusio is. I didn't either, but I read that and I thought, how intriguing. And so I looked it up, and then I could understand what it meant. It's kind of like bookends. If somebody can look up Psalm 8, if somebody named Molly would look up Psalm 8, and notice, read just verses 1 and 9. I can just tell you what it says. Oh Lord, my Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. Right? And okay, I gave you 1. Now you give me verse 9.
It says, "Oh Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name."
Okay, so see, that's an inclusio. It's the beginning and the end. It's sort of like bookends. Okay? And that's what this is. If you take those 14th and 15th verses or chapters of Exodus and these chapters 3 and 4 of Joshua, whereas the crossing of the Red Sea on dry ground inaugurated that 40-year march across the wilderness, we will see now crossing the Jordan River on dry ground will bring the march effectively to an end. So the bookends, an inclusio. So y'all learned a new word. Some of you may not have known that, but boy, this boy didn't. But anyway, it needed a name besides bookends, So, let me tell you something else. As we go through this, you're going to see some things that were repeated from those first 2 chapters of Joshua, and we're going to do 2 chapters tonight, 3 and 4. I know we usually just do 1. I know. But we usually just do a chapter, but there's not a good place to stop in 3 and 4, and between 3 and 4, and there a lot of repetition in 3 and 4. You'll see that. So don't get tangled up with the chronology of this thing. Don't get worried about which happened first, or how come he's saying this again. Don't worry about that. Just look at all the overall picture of God's grace and how he worked through this crossing of the Jordan. Okay? This inclusio. Okay? Y'all still impressed with that word? All right. So, again, just look at the overall, rather than the chronology, look at the theology of what's going to be going on here. Because you're going to see several things, and you'll look at that and say, that sounds familiar. Didn't we just read that? So, let's begin on Joshua chapter 3. And we're going to look at those first 4 verses. I got my clock here, so I get through with it. I think we'll get through kind of early, to tell you the truth, but maybe not. We'll read these first 4 verses of chapter 3 of Joshua. And it begins like this. Bright and early the next morning, Joshua and the Israelites left Shittim and came to the Jordan. They camped there before crossing the river. After 3 days, the leaders went through the camp and commanded the people, "When you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God being carried by the Levitical priests, you must leave here and walk behind it. But stay about 3,000 feet behind it. Keep your distance so you can see which way you should go, for you have not traveled this way before. So if you look at that, that first verse, bright and early the next morning, just starting that next, well, what happened the day before that morning? What does he talk about? It's been a week since we looked at the other chapter. Yeah, they gave him that positive, and remember there were just two spies, and they only reported him, and they gave him that good report. And so then, bright and early the next morning, that's the bright and early the next morning. So they camped there before the cross. After 3 days, look, that's, remember over in chapter 1, verse 11, 1 verse 11, and it says, go through the camp and command the people, prepare your supplies, for within 3 days you will cross the Jordan River. So 3 days have passed now. So they're getting ready. They're getting ready to cross that river. Some of these folks are old enough to remember, or young enough, are not. They're old enough to remember that crossing the Red Sea. Some of the people would be. Now remember, though, that nobody over the age of 40 back at that time was going to be able to do it. But all those that were under 40 years later now, some of those people are actually about my age now, a little bit younger. And now they're going to finally see this happen. Some of them have just heard about this. But if you look in the overall scheme of things, it's been about 7 or 8 centuries since Abram received that covenant from the Lord in Genesis chapter 12, those first 3 verses, where he promises Abram that he was going to make a great nation out of him. So this is all now fixing to happen. It's just about, we're right on the cusp. I got to look that word up and be sure I'm using that one right. So what happened when they arrived at the river?
Camped for 3 days.
They camped for 3 days. And so they were supposed to stay back behind, how far?
3,000 cubits.
Nope.
Half a mile. Mine says half a mile.
Okay. There's different translations. So let me tell you, different translations. King James and the ESV had 2,000 cubits. It's all the same thing, okay? The NIV has 1,000 yards. The NET, which I'm using now, has 3,000 feet. And the NLT has about a half a mile. Then the BBV has 10 football fields. BBV would be the Birmingham version. About 10 football fields.
NIV says 2,000 cubits. NIV says 2,000 cubits.
Yeah, because a cubit was, they did it like this, but they had a guy with a longer arm. It's about 18 inches approximately. So everybody, when you're doing calculations, you see something in Scripture, if they talk about cubits, it's going to be about 1.5 feet for every
Yeah,
cubit.
what he's talking about, you said 1,000 cubits, which is in the old NIV.
Okay. What is the new NIV?
2,000.
It says what?
2,000.
King James is 2,000.
Which is 3,000 feet.
Okay, 1,000 yards in the NIV.
Yes.
But the new NIV has what?
2,000 cubits.
Okay, the same thing as the King James and the ESV. Okay, well, there's different, but they all amount to the same thing. They wanted them to stay back. Why? Because you haven't traveled this way before. And so you stay back behind and see what's going to happen. Let's look at verses.
I think he just wanted that distance between them and the ark. Because it was holy.
Accidentally touch it.
But they wanted to keep the ark in sight, or the ark to keep the people in sight so they won't get lost. Yeah.
And so what does that ark represent while we're on the ark? I mean, in this scenario, because we know the ark is going, in a minute we're going to see that the ark actually goes down in first on dry ground.
But didn't-
I think God leading them.
Yeah, it's like, that represents God. That is like God leading them. Exactly, Susan.
After the 40 years, they got back to the Jordan, didn't the smoke stop and they started following the ark? Remember they camped watching?
Yeah, and also the manna's going to quit too. There ain't no more free rides. No. The manna quit because they're going to actually eat from the harvest of the stuff that's happening. Remember, this is about harvest season, and the river is all flooded. It's in flood stage. Okay, so we're going to read a little bit farther. Let's see. Okay, verses 5 through 8. Let's see. Joshua told the people, ritually consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will perform miraculous deeds among you. Joshua told the priests, pick up the Ark of the Covenant and pass on ahead of the people. So they picked up the Ark of the Covenant and went ahead of the people. Now I'm going to tell you, you're going to read that again in a minute. You're going to say, how many times are they going to do that? So it's not chronologically written. So again, don't get all tangled up on that. You're going to see it again in a minute. Don't worry about it. I'm telling you, don't worry. Don't worry. Okay, so let's see. What verse did I so rudely interrupt myself on? 7. Okay, 7. The Lord told Joshua, this very day, this is a very important verse, not that they're not all, but the Lord told Joshua, this very day I will begin to honor you before all Israel. So they will know that I am with you just as I was with Moses. Now instruct the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant. When you reach the bank of the Jordan River, wade into the water. Okay? So how would they ritually, this is sort of a trivia question, but how would they ritually consecrate themselves? Anybody remember that? I gave you a hint. It's over in Exodus, chapter 19, verses 14 and 15. Okay. They would wash their clothes and they would abstain from sexual relations. Okay? And they would consecrate themselves in that. So, let's see. Now, verse 7, you look at that and God tells Joshua this. I'm going to, let's read it again. This very day I will begin to honor you before all Israel, so they will know that I am with you just as I was with Moses. Can you just imagine? I don't guess you can. I can't even imagine what that would have been like for Joshua. He was mentored by Moses those 40 years. And then Moses dies, and they know beforehand Moses is not going to go into the promised land. And now Joshua has taken the bull by the horn. He has taken the reins, and he's going to do a splendid job. But to hear God tell you that, so just put that in your ear. One more time. This very day I will begin to honor you before all Israel, so they will know that I am with you just as I was with Moses. Pretty heavy stuff. Pretty heavy stuff. And then he said again, I'll read this again. Instruct the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant. When you reach the bank of the Jordan River, wade into the water. Okay? So, let's go on forward. We got work to do here. Verse 9 through all the rest of that chapter, okay? Verse 9. Joshua told the Israelites, come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. Joshua continued, this is how you will know the living God is among you, and that he will truly drive out before you the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, and the Jebusites. I think that's all of the ites except the parasites and the termites. All the rest of the ites are there. Okay? Look at verse 11. Look, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of the whole earth is ready to enter the Jordan ahead of you. Now select for yourselves, now you're going to see this a time or two again. Select for yourselves 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one per tribe. When the feet of the priests carrying the ark of the Lord of the whole earth, touch the water of the Jordan, the water coming downstream towards you will stop flowing and pile up. Getting pretty exciting. It's all fixing to happen. So when the people, verse 14, so when the people left their tents to cross the Jordan, the priests carrying the ark of the covenant went ahead of them. When the ones carrying the ark reached the Jordan And the feet of the priests carrying the ark touched the surface of the water. And it says in parentheses then, the Jordan is at flood stage all during harvest time. We've read that a couple times leading up to this the past several weeks. And then verse 16, the water coming downstream toward them stopped flowing. It piled up far upstream at Adam, the city near Zarephath. There was no water at all flowing to the sea of the Rift Valley. That's just to the Salt Sea. And what is the Salt Sea? It's the Dead Sea. Okay. And the people then crossed the river opposite Jericho. Now, I read that when they crossed Jericho, it was about across the Jordan, and we're about to head for Jericho here shortly. It's about 5 miles, and they lose about 450 feet in elevation. They're about 450 feet higher right now than they will be at that time. Just a note to think about the landscape there. Verse 17, the priest carrying the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firmly on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan. All Israel crossed over on dry ground until the entire nation was on the other side. Now wait, it hasn't really happened yet. They're going to repeat this again in a minute, and we're going to see it actually happen. So, let's see. What notes did I have? What were some of the highlights of chapter 3 for you? What did you see? What were your favorite parts or highlights, kind of?
Water, for one thing.
Yeah, that would certainly catch your attention.
Because that's how Moses escaped Egypt.
Right, exactly.
And it's more, I mean, especially down there when it rains, yeah, the ditches quit flowing, but they're still wet.
Yeah.
They're still muddy, but
Yeah.
it was on dry ground.
Yeah.
But I think when he said dry ground, I mean.
It's dry ground. Yeah, I think so too. I don't think it was a little bit muddy. I don't think it was at all muddy, because it says dry ground in pretty much every translation. Well, not pretty much. Every translation said it's on dry ground. And so it was dry ground. That's right.
So my way of thinking is just, I did this for Moses, and I'm doing this for Joshua.
Okay. All right. That's two different things. That crossing and then telling Joshua what he told him. I am going to honor you before all these people. They're going to know that I am going to take care of you just like I did Moses. Okay. Other things that you saw that you might have picked up on that you particularly like. You look like you're about to say something.
I do? Okay, let me heard it.
Maybe not. Maybe I misread you.
Oh, sorry.
Miss Susan.
I still think, yeah, she asked me questions. So, I don't know, the fact, it just had to have been so amazing. It's still the water thing, and they had, while they were consecrating themselves for 3 days, they had time to think about this. And like you said, some of them went through, some of them didn't. So don't you know, even if you trust God, sometimes you're still a little fearful until you see it. And then when you see it, you're still amazed. Even though He's been providing manna all these years and everything else, you're still like, wow,
It's the whole thing, really. All of that chapter 3 is just all amazing. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I think I had forgotten that it says that the water was cut off a good deal upstream. In my mind, and just like go into the water and it like immediately has this huge Hollywood effect where it's like this, which it was still this amazing miracle.
Yeah.
But they didn't probably see the water immediately stop. Like they had to wait just a little bit for that water to drain. Like they couldn't see
Not
it.
long.
Well, yes, but they,
Like about.
yeah, as soon as their feet.
well, I mean, but it's
Because it's
water's
once he
upstream,
stopped
yeah.
it's still running
It
down.
was the rest had to go. So
Okay.
I think I'm addressing my own fear in the sense of sometimes, I'm looking for God to, at 44, I'm looking for God to do these like thunderbolt and lightning things, which He can, but He does, and not to say this, it's not taking away from the amazingness of this, but like He made them go out and touch the water first.
Yeah.
you know, so
Well,
he makes it
but he
so that
says as soon as he touched the water,
immediately, correct.
But they
It
had
was
to
dry.
take that step and
Yeah.
step into the water.
yeah, they had to take
That's
that
what they
step.
on the shore going, oh, no, that is.
Remember that line when I say, what do we take away from this?
Yes, and I know, I guess I just jumped ahead, but like they have to put their big toe in the water at least.
Yeah.
So,
Well, just coming up to the thing,
yes,
and it's at flood stage,
yeah, that's
and
true.
you're thinking, you're looking at your buddy and you're saying,
Yes.
what do you think? You want to kind of hang back and see what the rest of them are going to do? Hopefully, that's not what you do. I mean, God has led them for 40 years.
Right.
They led them across the Red Sea, and for 40 years, He has provided for them, and they have come upon that time that we've been talking about, it seems like forever, and now it's going to happen in this next chapter. Okay?
I have an Amplified Bible,
Okay.
and in verse 16, it has in parentheses Psalms 114.
It says
It
what?
says Psalms 114. So I turn over to Psalm 114.
As a reference?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, okay, well, read that to us.
well, it's long, but
Oh, well, just tell us the gist of it.
it just talks about the water stacking up.
Okay, all right, okay. That's a psalm that tells about that,
Uh-huh.
okay, the crossing of the Red Sea. And there were songs, psalms were mostly songs and poetry. And so there were songs written about that, those very things.
So it was the
Thank you.
Levite,
Thank
the
you.
Levites carrying the Ark of the Covenant, right?
Huh?
The Levites is one of,
The Levitical priests, it calls them, yeah. But that would have been and who were the Levitical priests? You had all of the tribe of Levi looking after everything
Right.
normally, but who were the priests? We've talked about this a bunch of times. Only who could serve as priests? The descendants of Aaron, yeah, descendants of Aaron. But this would have been the Levitical priests. They're separate from these 12 men, okay? It said, pick out 12 men. And so we're going to see that again.
only thing I really wanted to bring this up now. They've got the Ark, they're carrying the Ark.
Yeah,
And even all the wavering that the Israelites did in their travels, this group didn't. They were solid.
they had the eye on the prize.
They had the eye on the prize. And he said, step in that water, it's flooding, we're going to make it through even if we have to walk on top.
Yeah, they had those Levitical priests led the way, basically. Now, once they get in there, he's going to tell those other 12 guys to run on up ahead of them, and he's going to give them a job to do there. Let's go to chapter 4, verse 1. And let me look here. I'm going to read those first 11 verses. Okay. When the entire nation was on the other side, the Lord told Joshua, select for yourselves 12 men from the people, one per tribe. See, we read that a while ago. Instruct them, pick up 12 stones. Now he gets the assignment for those 12 people. Instruct them, pick up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from the very place where the priests stand firmly, and carry them over with you and put them in the place where you camp tonight. Joshua summoned the 12 men he had appointed from the Israelites, one per tribe. And Joshua told them, go in front of the ark of the Lord your God to the middle of the Jordan. Each of you is to put a stone on his shoulder. Now these would have been good-sized stones. They weren't like pebbles or rocks. These were good-sized stones. Probably all the guy could handle. Then middle of that verse says, according to the number of the Israelite tribes, 12 of them. Okay, verse 6. The stones will be a reminder to you. When your children ask someday, why are these stones so important to you? Tell them how the water of the Jordan stopped flowing before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the water of the Jordan stopped flowing. These stones will be a lasting memorial for the Israelites. The Israelites did just as Joshua commanded. They picked up 12 stones according to the number of the Israelite tribes from the middle of the Jordan, as the Lord had instructed Joshua. They carried them over with them to the camp and put them there. Joshua, verse 9, Joshua also set up 12 stones in the middle of the Jordan, in the very place where the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant stood. They remain there to this very day. Now the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant were standing in the middle of the Jordan until everything the Lord had commanded Joshua to tell the people was accomplished. In accordance with all that Moses had commanded Joshua, the people went across quickly. Verse 11, and when all the people had finished crossing, the Ark of the Lord and priests crossed as the people looked on. Okay? So, what did the Lord have them do after they crossed? Right after they crossed, they had those 12 guys. Select those 12 guys. It tells them again, select those 12 guys. What are they supposed to do? Yeah, pick up a boulder or a rock, a good sized rock. What are they going to do with that rock? Make a memorial. They're going to take it to the other side. But then there are 12 more, and where are they going to put those? Right in the middle of the Jordan. Now this thing is at flood stage when the water comes back. However, in my reading, it said that probably it wouldn't have been over a couple of feet deep, maybe 3 feet deep, at normal times, once the flooding goes down. We're in harvest time now, and it's at flood stage. So they set these up, and later on, I guess you would be able to see at least the top rocks up there, the boulders, I think one of y'all said, like Colorado. Oh, I love those Rocky Mountains. Okay, well, let's see. We better get off those Rocky Mountains.
Bruce,
Yes, sir.
there's a name for that kind of monument that's set up.
Okay,
Set up.
what is it?
We just sang about it. It's called Ebenezer.
Ebenezer, okay. All right.
That song, Here I Raised My Ebenezer, that's what it's talking
Okay, very good.
about. Moral of God.
Thank you for that. I had not thought of that. I do remember seeing that before, but I did not recall that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jerry. All right, so we ready to go on? Okay. All minds are clear? We had a preacher who used to say that all the time. He'd make a point and he'd look out, are all minds clear? Okay. Verse 12. Verse 12. Let's see. We're going to go through 18. The Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh crossed over armed for battle ahead of the Israelites, just as Moses had instructed them. About 40,000 battle-ready troops marched past the Lord to fight on the Rift Valley plains of Jericho. That's those plains in that valley that I was telling you about. It drops in elevation about 450 feet over that 5 miles. Verse 14, that day the Lord brought honor to Joshua before all Israel. They respected him all his life, just as they had respected Moses. The Lord told Joshua, let's see, how far am I going here? The Lord told Joshua, verse 16, instruct the priests carrying the ark of the covenantal laws to come up from the Jordan. So Joshua instructed the priests. Now this is the actual instruction. It's been talking about it before. This is where he actually says it. He says, so Joshua instructed the priests, come up from the Jordan. The priests carrying the ark of the covenant of the Lord came up from the middle of the Jordan, and as soon as they set foot on dry land, the water of the Jordan flowed again and returned to flood stage. Pretty amazing stuff. It almost makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up just reading about it, really. I mean, when you think about that, of course, we shouldn't be surprised he did that at the Red Sea too. But God is always faithful. I don't want to get into y'all's what we're going to take away.
Think about the sound. I mean, all that water was suddenly released. It had to be just roaring.
Yeah, I'll bet it was. I'll bet it was. And the Dead Sea down there wondering what happened. Because there's a lot of people that had to cross. There's a lot of, how many people? I think it was something like 600,000 guys alone, something like that. And so if you had the wives and some kids and stuff, you're probably looking at, I would.
Half of Houston walking across. Half of Houston walking across.
Yeah, that's about right.
And then all their
herds and their slaves.
the herds and everything else.
Yeah, all the animals.
And I just, the sea doesn't flow. So
Yeah.
we separated the sea, there were just, the wind blew and it separated.
Right,
But when you stop a river, it keeps piling up.
yeah.
So the heat just kept getting taller and taller and taller to everybody.
So this is at least as spectacular as that Red Sea, isn't it? It really is.
Imagine the people that lived upstream.
Oh, yeah.
Look outside in this one.
Down there, they called it the Nueces River, and all those people said, oh, no, another water release.
Well, it's funny that Susan just said a wall, which I've always thought of a wall, but Terry just was saying, oh, something about it must have flooded their town, that all those water would have, which it doesn't say.
It doesn't say that it did.
Like, so I'm just fascinated, like, oh, I
It
wish I,
says it stood up, so.
yeah, no, I've always thought of that, I mean.
It just kind of stacked
So
up.
that's all my questions, let's forgot now. I had another one.
Yeah, we'll see if you remember that.
Oh,
I'm always saying,
I'm not taking anything with me except for that paper with all my questions on it.
with your questions on it. Yeah, you know what, when we get there, all those questions, we'll forget all about those. Our bottom jaw will be hanging down the
That's
pavement.
true, that's true.
The streets of gold, in fact, pavement.
Let's sit and have Joshua tell the story again.
That's true.
What's that?
Joshua's gonna retell the story.
Yeah, maybe so, who knows? He might. Well, I don't know what's gonna happen, but I know that we're gonna have the wedding supper of the Lamb, and I will be there for that. And I know the chili was really good the other night. Yeah, chili, but nothing compared to this. Okay, let's move on. Let's see, verses 19 through the rest of the chapter says, the people went up from the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month and camped in Gilgal on the eastern border of Jericho. Now Joshua set up in Gilgal the 12 stones they had taken from the Jordan. He told the Israelites, when your children someday ask their fathers, what do these stones represent? Explain to your children, Israel crossed the Jordan River on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the water of the Jordan before you while you crossed over. It was just like when the Lord your God dried up the Red Sea before us while we crossed it. He has done this so that all the nations of the earth, not just you guys, but all the nations of the earth might recognize the Lord's power, and so you might always obey the word, the Lord your God.
What verse was that? What verse was that?
I was reading 19 through the end, 24. So which?
That's what, 4:19?
No, Joshua chapter 4, and then that was verses 19 through 24.
Was that the last one? I'd like to say something.
Yeah, please.
So, as I'm listening to this, the shadow that you see here, or that I see at least is Jesus being baptized in Jordan by John the Baptist, who is from the Levitical, right? Because he was Zechariah's son, who was from Aaron. Jesus being baptized. So Jesus then starting the leading of both Israel, but not just Israel, but the nations, right? So the 12 tribes put their stones, and then inside are the 12 stones that, if you read in Revelation, it says that the tree that stood on both sides of the river of life, and those leaves from that tree were for the healing of the nations, right? Okay. So that's a beautiful thing that he's.
Yeah, you can tie that on.
The shadow of how the Bible continues to prove itself to be what it is, right? And for Luke 24:44 to continue to prove itself, right? That he opened our minds to the scriptures, right? That the whole book, that Moses, the law of Moses, the prophets, and even the Psalms were about him. Yeah. Isn't that amazing? Yeah,
and that's what this is saying here. It wasn't just for you guys. This is so all the nations in the earth, on the whole earth, are going to know the power of the Lord God. God loves all people, and he loved all people at that time. So you wonder why did he go in there and destroy all those people? Well, those people should have known better. I mean, look at, you had Ishmael, that was born about the same time as Abraham, yeah.
It was Abraham's son.
Yeah, okay, so born about the same time. So Ishmael should have known about the Lord too, but they went a different direction. Okay, and then you had Esau and Jacob. You know, now Esau knew too, but their nation didn't. And all those nations should have known. I mean, they had the opportunity to have known, but they did not tell their children, like it's going to tell later on, and it has told us time and time again, that we need to repeat all this to our children and be sure that they understand what is said in Scripture and how these things have come to pass. So, okay.
But Esau's descendants weren't destined for destruction.
Yeah.
That God told.
But they were not godly people.
Deuteronomy, God told him, when you march up and take out
Yeah,
the
leave
descendants
Esau
of
alone.
Rephaim and Bashan and stuff like that, you leave the Edomites and the Ammonites alone.
Yeah, and the Edomites would have been Esau's fault.
And the Ammonites were Lot's descendants.
Yeah.
So it seems like the ones that were destined for utter destruction were kind of like half-breeds. They had Nephilim blood in them. If you
Yeah.
trace back all the names of those.
Yeah.
At least that's the way the ancient Jews viewed it.
Yeah, and the idea really is that they had the opportunity from their ancestors to know about God, but they just left God. But that, you know, I mean, we see all these wonderful things that are happening here with this nation of Israel in a few pages. And by the time we get to the next book, Judges, no, I guess we're going to get to Samuel next, right? But we're going to see their ancestors saw all this happen on this day. So, okay, when it says, what time of the year did it say this happened? It said, what?
Harvest.
Okay, but it also said what month and what day.
Yeah.
So what day was
March
it?
25th.
Huh?
March 25th. Is that what you're looking for, the miracle?
The day that they crossed. It was on the first month and what day? 10th day. Okay, what's going to happen 4 days from now?
Wait, where y'all seeing that?
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Got it?
Yes.
Okay. So the 10th day of the first month. What happens on the 14th day of the first month? Passover. What happens preparing for Passover on the 10th day? They're supposed to select the lamb on the 10th day. Now, we're going to see eventually in chapter 5, you're going to see that they actually did celebrate Passover on the 14th day. At twilight, I guess the 14th day, they start with Passover, and then they go into the week of what? Man, my mind's gone blank. Huh?
Feast of Tabernacles.
Yeah,
Or boots, or.
It's called the.
I'll let you know next week. My mind's thinking ahead on this. Sorry. Okay, but they'll have Passover and the following week. Okay, old dum here can't think of that, but let's see. Anything else? What do we take away from all of this? These first 4 chapters, I guess you could say, but in particular the chapter 3 and 4 that we kind of looked at tonight. What do you take away from this?
I think about them telling them to set up this memorial to remember and to teach their kids about what had happened.
Mm-hmm.
And we still teach our kids just from the scripture of it, but for them, this was their testimony.
Yeah.
And so for us, I think not only should we be teaching our kids the Bible, which comes first, but to teach and tell them about what God's done in our lives and in our family's life, generation to generation. I think that's powerful.
All of those things, things that happened in history. That you think of the history of Oak Ridge Baptist Church. There's a plaque out on the front of this church that tells when the church was started. Now, that doesn't mean that this building was built then, but the church was started. Y'all remember what it says on the plaque, what year? 1980. And it was started as a mission church from First Baptist Church. And First Baptist Church sent some folks over here. Well, they volunteered to come. And the only one that's left that is one of the very originals would be Carolyn, Singleton. Yeah, and you weren't far behind. Y'all probably weren't far behind either, were you?
We were 6 months in.
Yeah, 6 months, okay. You were here when they started building this building right here. But you,
It was completed, pretty much completed.
okay, yeah. But this little old church First Baptist Church started this with the idea that they would help support this church as long as needed to. But boy, this church just took off. And this church has only had 2 pastors so far. We're going to have a third here before long. But all this time, from 1980 to 2000, the end of 2023, basically, we only had two pastors. We'll start with another one whenever the Lord deems that proper for the committee to select that person that He has in mind already. Any other things to take away from this? Yes, ma'am.
I love hearing the word that we read tonight because it shows how He has been present for His people, right?
Yeah.
God has always been, He was present, He's present for us now. And I love how you can see how God is truly a promise keeper, and what His word says, He does.
Yeah.
You know? And then I love to see how where there is no way, God made a way. We just have to put our trust in the words that He said and our faith in.
Yeah. There's no way that we see. But, that's what, love the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. Proverbs 3:5. Lean not on your own understanding is my favorite part of that verse. And that's speaking to what you were just talking about.
Right, and how He made a way in Christ. There was no way for us to be made right with God until He made a way for His people.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
One thing also they keep reiterating, the 12 stones was a monument.
Yeah.
It wasn't an idol.
No.
It's just a reminder.
It was a memorial.
It's just a memorial, just like that sign on the front of this building. If it blows away.
Yeah. It's just to remind us that the guys that went before us did this. And they did it because God blessed them to be able to do it. They didn't do it without God's blessing, because they couldn't have gotten this far along that quick, this little church, without God's help. So God was really in this. Any other comments?
It's a pattern, right? It's God's pattern for it. Our faith isn't blind, right? Faith, by virtue of faith, it's not blind. Hebrews 11:1 says that it's a substance of things hoped for, evidence of things not seen. So God's pattern is what we have our faith in. So when people ask us, why do you have faith in God? Because it's His pattern. He showed it to us year and year and year after year to Israel, to us, to the disciples. He shows you the same pattern over and over again. You can really walk away and not just hope and think, I believe in that God I don't want to see. No, you see Him.
That's right.
Because that's His pattern.
Exactly. And we see it in our own lives. We see it in our own lives. I mean, particularly when you're younger and you have all these difficulties. That's not to say that old people don't have difficulties, right, Lori? We have difficulties too. But when we're younger, we go through a lot of things, and God just always gets us through these things. We don't know how, but we don't see that way. But if we lean not on our own understanding, then God will make that way, and God will take care of that. And you see it over and over. Again, the older you get, the more you learn to trust Him. And instead of wondering if God's going to take care of you, just say, well, I wonder how He's going to do this one. I know He's going to take care of it, but I wonder how. We better, okay, go ahead. Now, go ahead.
sorry.
We got time for one more.
Okay, well, I knew someone who would actually, they had several stones, they called them their stones of remembrance, and it was just a real brief little, like those big moments in their life where they knew in that moment, like, this was God. Again, he's always showing up for us, but that moment they realized it, and they wrote it, maybe just a word or two on those little stones, and they kept it in their house. And obviously we can do journaling, and which is good, but I always thought that was neat because it was a tactile, quick reminder, because, if you go through those trials and you think, you have that, wait, oh, that's right, okay, go remind yourself, trust God, it was right there,
Yeah.
quick, and it was, again, it's not all about our own, and it's not about our own experience at all, but that was helpful, and I thought that was kind of a neat
Yeah, it is. It is.
journaling / stones of remembrance thing that was from this passage.
I'm glad you had that one more thing.
Well, how about one more?
Okay, let's have one more.
Five more minutes.
I can do it. I don't have any kids over there. I can do this all night. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
The pattern and
Yeah.
stuff like they were talking about.
Some of the patterns aren't real great.
It comes through so strong here, and it seems like God adjusts them a little bit as He pours out His grace on us and stuff like that. Because when you think about it, of course, we all know this is their second run at this.
Yeah.
And the first time they failed miserably with the spies, bad report. Hey, there's giants over there. We can't handle it. They're like grasshoppers. And then we know that these folks we're reading about now, their daddies and granddaddies all died out. There's none of them there anymore. But now they're back. And before they went over, God sent them up the east side of the Jordan to clean out that area all the way up to Bashan, took out Sihon, king of Heshbon, and Og, king of Bashan. And talk about Og's bed was like 13 and a half feet long, a big iron bed. Another giant. But now their sons saw giants and they just went after them.
Yeah.
And of course Moses is still calling shots when this happened. And then Joshua was there, and if you go back and read Deuteronomy, God through Moses reminded Joshua, say, hey, when it's your time, God will provide the way, and you will handle the west side, the Canaanites and all that, just like you saw us handle these giants here on the east side.
Yeah.
So it's a repeat, but God demonstrated a little bit more of His ability to handle these fears that they had of the giants in the land and stuff like that. So circling and strengthening at the same time. It's God's grace.
And they had to have a lot of faith. And their new leader, they had Moses, but chapter 3, verse 7, God promises to make him great, to show him to be great. And then in verse 14 of chapter 4, he fulfills that. We got to get out of here. We got to get out of here. So y'all can go over and get your kids, and I can go home and eat cake or something. No. You folks hang around because we're going to have some prayer requests and that'll be quick though, so you can go get your kids. So say good night. Good night.
Good night.
Are we off?